Oh, good morning and welcome back to the Morning Report. We are in the middle of another government shutdown, and you know the drill. Washington has stopped pretending to govern, and the news networks are on high alert. And the American public are caught in the crossfire of one more made for TV budget standoff. But here's what matters most, and what no one inside the Beltway wants to admit. This situation isn't really about money, not in the way that they talk about it. It's about trust. It's about whether Republicans, specifically the ones in the Senate, will actually stand with the voters who put them there, or whether they'll go right back to doing what they've always done, cutting quiet deals in back rooms and then selling them as victories. Well, here's the problem. The conservative base, the people who knock on doors and donate $20 at a time, who turn out rain or shine and are fine with holding the line. Okay, they're okay with the fight. We're okay with the fight. They don't flinch at media scolding. Um, they've been begging for a Republican Party with a spine. But Senate Republicans, well, they're already hitting the escape hatch. John Thune is openly saying that he is back channeling with Democrats, cutting backroom deals, sketching what negotiations might look like once the government is open again. And in other words, the base wants a fight, the Senate wants a deal. Okay, that tension isn't just a minor tactical difference. It's a fault line that could crack the GOP wide open as we march into the 2026 midterms. Today, we're going to walk through it. What the base expects, why Senate Republicans cave, what history tells us about these fights, how voters are likely to react, and what happens if the GOP keeps choosing convenience over conviction. So let's start with the conservative base, because this whole story doesn't make sense unless you understand where the energy of the Republican Party actually lives. For years, well, decades really, the Republican establishment has made promises, big ones. We'll shrink government. We'll repeal Obamacare. We'll cut spending. We'll secure the border. Over and over, these were the pledges. But what happened? Government grew. Obamacare is permanent. Spending has skyrocketed to the tune of $22.6 trillion over the next 10 years. And the border turned into a sieve. Had it not been for President Trump. So every time Republicans gain power, House majorities, Senate control, hell, even the White House, the base said, finally, we can stop the bleeding. Finally, we can hold the line. Well, but instead of holding it, leadership retreated. They passed continuing resolutions. They signed off on omnibus bills. They caved to must pass legislation deadlines. They shrugged and said, well, it's the best deal we could get. So the result is that the grassroots has gotten tougher. We've gotten less patient. They've come to see every compromise as surrender. And you know what? I'm not crazy for thinking that way. Because if you never fight here, if you never draw the line on the shutdown fight, when will you? If you always blink first, then the leverage never belongs to you. And let me tell you guys, the base is tired of losing by winning. They want to see Republicans use the tools they have, even uncomfortable ones, to stop the spending addiction. So that's why you hear so many say, shut it down, keep it shut down until something changes. Okay, let's flip the lens. Why do Senate Republicans so often buckle under pressure? There are four reasons. Write these down. The first one is donor class pressure. What do we always say? Follow the money. Big business does not like shutdowns. Defense contractors want predictable budgets. Wall Street hates uncertainty. The Chamber of Commerce calls senators day and night, reminding them that market jitters are bad for reelection campaigns. Senators hear those voices more often than they hear ours. Number two, media framing. Every major outlet frames shutdowns the same way. Republicans are hostage takers. Democrats are protecting vital programs. Even when Democrats are the ones refusing to pass a clean bill, like now, the GOP ends up with the blame. Senators, for some reason, fear these headlines. Number three, purple state panic. Republicans from swing states are especially jumpy. Think of Maine, Alaska, North Carolina. These senators hear from suburban voters who roll their eyes at government dysfunction. Oh, well, whatever, right? They think compromise is what wins elections. Number four, the Senate club culture. The Senate is not a battlefield, it's a country club. And that club rewards deal makers, not brawlers. The currency isn't conviction, is congeniality. So when a shutdown happens, their instinct is to fix it quietly, not fight it out loudly. And it all adds up, and you see why John Thune says out loud that he's back channeling with Democrats. That's not a bug. That's the system working the way they've built it. But here's the rub. What looks like pragmatism in Washington looks like betrayal everywhere else. All right. Before we dig into historical parallels, let's take a moment. You know, one way that you can hold the line in your own life, well, it's with your coffee. 7 Weeks Coffee doesn't just give you a bold, rich brew, which it does. It's coffee with a mission. They donate 10% of every sale to pro-life emergency pregnancy centers across the country. So when you start your day, you're not just waking up, you're making a difference. Head over to 7weekscoffee.com. Use the promo code FightbackMedia at checkout and let your morning fuel the fight for life. Let's get back to it. Okay, folks, this isn't the first shutdown, and it certainly will not be the last. Let's back it up. In 1995 and 96, we had Bill Clinton versus Newt Gingrich. Republicans shut down the government over spending and Medicare. The media skewered Newt Gingrich. Clinton's poll numbers went up, and Republicans eventually folded. The lesson the GOP establishment took: don't fight shutdowns. You'll lose. Here we go. Fast forward to, to 2013. We had President Obama versus Cruz and the House GOP. Ted Cruz and the House GOP. Conservatives pushed to defund Obamacare. This is 3 years after Obamacare was signed into law. Okay, the government shut down for 16 days. The media screamed about extremism. The GOP caved. Obamacare survived, and base conservatives were furious. 5 years later, 2018, 2019, we have Trump v. the Democrats. This was the longest shutdown in history. It was 35 days. I think I went over and I did a video over in front of the IRS office, not far from my house. And it was closed. And I was like, is anybody out here sad that the IRS office is closed? There wasn't, right? Trump pushed for border wall funding. Democrats would not budge. They stuck together. Eventually, Trump signed a deal to reopen the government without the wall money. Trump, your champion, your hero, caved. Again, the base was disheartened. Notice the pattern every time. The shutdown ends with Republicans caving. The shutdown ends with Republicans caving. Democrats declaring victory and conservatives asking why they bother electing Republicans at all. Why are we even doing this? That's the scar tissue that makes today's base so adamant. Do not cave this time. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. Polling consistently shows that voters blame Republicans more for shutdown than Democrats. A recent NPR Marist poll, 38% blame Republicans, 27% blame Democrats, 31% say both. Historically, Gallup shows the same pattern. The party that pushes the shutdown takes the biggest hit, especially among independents. That's what Republican senators are looking at. They see those numbers and they panic because they're cowards. Because what they don't see, or for some reason don't want to see, is that while independents may roll their eyes, the Republican base doesn't mind the fight. In fact, they want the fight. And midterms are base turnout elections. So which matters more? Suburban independents reading the Washington Post, or millions of conservatives deciding why bother on election day? That's the question Senate Republicans never answer. All right, so let's get concrete. This shutdown is tangled up with Obamacare subsidies, the premium tax credits that Democrats want to extend. For conservatives, this is maddening because Obamacare was supposed to be repealed. Instead, Republicans are now negotiating over how to extend it. It feels like losing ground, even in a supposed win. And that's the deeper frustration. Shutdown should be moments to advance conservative priorities, border security, spending caps, regulatory rollback. Instead, the GOP establishment uses them to trade away leverage in exchange for promises of future talks. That's why the base keeps shouting, hold the line. or stop pretending you ever will. All right, I need to settle down. So let's pause for a moment. You know what else is about leverage? It's where you shop. Every dollar you spend is a vote. And when you buy from woke corporations, you're voting against your own values. That's why we're proud here at Fight Back Media to partner with Mammoth Marketplace, the pro freedom, pro family alternatives to Amazon. Thousands of products, from household goods to health supplements, all from businesses that share your values. So go to mammothmarketplace.com and use the discount code report10, report10, and get 10% off your first order. Stop funding people who hate you. Start buying from people who stand with you. Back to the fight. Here's a nightmare scenario for Republicans. They cave quickly. The government reopens, and the message to the base is loud and clear. We talk tough, but when push comes to shove, we fold like a cheap suit. We fold like a cheap long chair from the dollar store. Okay, then what happens? Turnout drops. Even 2% fewer conservatives showing up in the 2026 election flips close races. Donations dry up. Small dollar fundraising collapses when people feel betrayed. Primary fights erupt. Frustrated voters recruit challengers. The party spends millions fighting itself instead of Democrats. And worst of all, the Democrats can frame the whole episode as proof as Republicans can't govern. That narrative, if it sticks, will cost seats. But imagine the opposite. Imagine Senate Republicans for once stood shoulder to shoulder with their base. Imagine they said, we're not opening this government until real cuts are made. That would electrify conservatives. And it would force Democrats to explain why they'd rather keep Washington closed than cut waste. It would give Republicans a clear contrast heading into 2026. We fight for you. They fight for bureaucracy. Yes, the media would howl. Yes, some donors would panic. But the base would show up in droves. And in the midterms, that's everything. So, because this isn't just about shutdowns, it's a pattern. On spending, they retreat. On border security, they retreat. On cultural fights like DEI, ESG, woke capitalism, they retreat. Conservative base is tired of a party that campaigns as lions and governs as lambs. They want consistency. They want courage. They want conviction. So until Senate Republicans learn that lesson, every shutdown, every negotiation, every budget fight will end the same way. With a base that feels ignored and a party that limps into the next election. All right, before we close, quick reminder. Independent media like this doesn't survive without you. Because we don't have corporate sponsors writing blank checks, we rely on you, the listener, the viewer, to keep the lights on and the message alive. So if you want to support this work, head on over to patreon.com/morning report. And for just a few dollars a month, you can help us keep fighting, keep producing, and keep telling the truth. That's patreon.com/morning report. Your voice, your support, your partnership, it all matters. So here we are. Another shutdown, another standoff, another moment where the Republican Party has to choose conviction or convenience. The base is clear. Hold the line. The Senate is wavering. Cut a deal. What history says is that they'll cave. And even then, polls say they'll be blamed. The base says, what the hell, why bother? And if the GOP doesn't listen this time, they'll learn because 2026 will make them pay. This has been the Morning Report. Just like always, go out there and learn something, love somebody. And for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye bye now.